It is back. The Manor Lords, the game that got its name from the Tale World's idea wall, yet strange choices aside, I have to say this new IP has to be one of my most hyped games, for ages. It's been such a long time since I've been this excited for a game, let alone something entirely new. Whilst they do have a similar name, I do think that Manor Lords and Bannerlords is on some sort of the same level of hype for me, at least right at this moment. The developers have been able to take what many city builders did before. Granted, games like Banished and Ostriv, it's not really anything new, but they've taken that idea and said, nah, we don't want to just build cities. What if we just sprinkle in a little bit of medieval Total Wars battles and then a little bit of some Mountain Blade type diplomacy, and they created this melting pot of, well, goodness. And yeah, it's incredible. So let's get into some of the new info and gameplay that we've been shown for Manor Lords. The map you'll be playing in is divided up into regions. These regions are owned by lords and ladies, as you would expect, and the player, which is you there, is no exception. You have this region to control, build upon and thrive with the hope of someday being strong enough to conquer, or as we'll get into, talk your way into gaining more land for yourself. Each region has its own traits. The region will specialize in different resources and different features, including their very own development trees. For example, one region may have lush green lands where crops can be grown, harvested and support many populations. Or you may have a region that is centered towards valuable minerals and ores, and you guessed it, this can be its own mining region. These can be done with pretty much any resource or good. But what if your region doesn't have the possibilities to do vast amounts of farming? Well, you're going to have to find another way of making money or feeding your people, or just trade. You could maybe have one region that has all the farms and provides the food for the rest of your towns and cities, and all these resources can be moved between the towns and cities as wished, creating a whole living, breathing world where people and places have specializations, much like the real world at the time. Now, as I mentioned, regions have their own development trees. When you upgrade buildings in the area, you gain points. These points can then be spent unlocking new research, better farms, better mines, better smiths, and better recruitment areas, so on, for each region. But these unlocks are specific to whatever region you unlock them in. So this pushes the more specialization gameplay, with one region maybe focusing their research points on looking towards manufacturing goods like armor, weapons and clothes, rather than wasting them on agricultural research when the terrain in their region doesn't really support it so well. Across the world, merchants will be traveling between these regions and towns doing, well, what merchants do best, I guess, buying and selling goods to be taken to places that perhaps don't have an abundance in some resources that others may do. For example, leather may be cheap in Area 1, as the town specialises in cattle farming. They make it in vast quantities, so it is no shortage there. This merchant may then buy that leather and then take it to Area B, where they're more focused on mining the rare and valuable minerals, but are in need of some good boots, so they take the leather and they're more willing to pay more for it. But be aware, these free merchants will be more attracted and more inclined to travel to towns with rarer goods and more valuable things. They're not going to be wasting their time on these low-level items that don't bring in the big bucks. But what about social structure? It was a massive part of medieval Europe and paved the way for some of the cruelest or fairest of leaders. And it's no different in Manor Lords. As a noble, you can tax your towns as you see fit. Instead of doing a more grand strategy game like Total War, we're down in the details ourselves, so taxation isn't just a generic taxation. It's fully customizable and interchangeable. Maybe you have plans for war, dreams of conquering and raising an army to strike fear into the enemy's hearts. Well, that ain't free, and it definitely isn't cheap. So you're going to have to put more of the tax money to go in towards smiths, ranges, barracks, or even farms. You need food for a bigger army after all, don't you? But nobles aren't the only ones in the game in this hierarchy. Of course, there's always going to be a bigger fish, which means there is a king. The king can give rewards to the most influential lords, may it be goods, money, or even regions. Land can be a big part of growing your economy to support your armies, to then, well, with those armies, take more land. You can be a peacefaring nation who just farms, trades, and make hats for your fellow nobles, but I think given the chance, I would, and I think most people would rather build up the strongest army your country has ever seen and take what is rightfully theirs by force. Of course, as you would expect, you can constantly be talking to these other lords and nobles throughout the game, issuing demands or requests for trade, land, or just insults if that's more your thing. Screw having a debate on the import tax and iron. How about just a racial slur and a slap in the face? That may be a bit too far. Now, I've been teasing it, talking about armies and wars for a while, but let's actually get into that part. How can you actually get to the point where you can raise an army yourself? Can you just have one from the get-go? Yes and no. The recruitment system is divided into 3 categories. Peasant militia, these guys are, well, peasants. Calling upon them will cause your villagers to drop their plows and picks, find whatever weapon they can and rally to your side. Naturally, this will have a massive effect on your economy because no one's going to be working anymore. They're all going to be holding pitchforks and ready to raise whatever land they can. And let's be honest, they're not going to be all that good when it comes to fighting, or at least not to start with. They can get better weapons, and you can also train them up in barracks and archery ranges, so then maybe you could probably build up some sizable force of decently trained and equipped soldiers. But really, at least to begin with, peasant militia should probably be a last resort if you're being attacked and you have nothing left to stop the onslaught. So who else is there to recruit your armies? Well, you have mercenaries. They are, well, mercenaries. Quite self-explanatory. You pay some guys to fight for you, they're not going to be as loyal and they will probably cost a bunch, but if you have the balls and the coin to pay for it, they will fight strong and have good weapons and armor to suit. And finally, you have your lord's retinue. These guys are wearers at, standing side by side with your nobles, defending them and fighting for what they believe in. Trained since they could hold a sword, the lord's retinue will not let you down. These heavy troops are great. Furthermore, they can also be fully customized to your will. Maybe you want different colors or sigils, your pick. So they're perfect, right? Well, there's one issue. They're limited. You can't, of course, have a full army of lord's retinue. Epic that may be, realistic it is not. So use them wisely. I think most of your armies will be made up of vast amounts of trained and tested peasant militia, a few select mercenary units to fill out your weaker areas, and then the retinue as heavy backup in case all else fails. Or at least, that's how I would do it. Unfortunately, there is still no word on a release date for Manor Lords, and it's a shame because of how many people at this point are waiting for it. YouTubers all around have flocked to this game for good reason. Hundreds and thousands of you have viewed gameplay, info and analysis videos looking into why this game could be absolutely incredible. So you can bet, as soon as we know, I will be talking about the release date here. So make sure you stick around the channel for when that day finally arrives. But tomorrow I'm going to be going into 3 Manor Lord alternative games that you can get your teeth into whilst waiting for this classic, so make sure you check that out when it releases, or if you're watching this later, it may already have, so go and check it out on my channel. But until then, I will see you in the next one.